Alright, this video is about assumptions. Over the last 2 years, I basically wasted all of my time in basically the prime of my 20s when my brain was developing. I could be so much further along than I am now if I had just known what I'm about to talk about in this video. And as I've said, this video is about assumptions, something that nobody really even thinks about, but is going on all of the time and is actually what's causing basically all of your problems that you're not thinking about. And so I do recommend before we get into this that you watch this video at like 2 or 1.5 times speed. You can hit shift and then the little button. God, the blur's going crazy. But you know what? Just hit shift and then the right or the greater than symbol key, and it'll speed up. So let's get into it again. Or actually, later we're also going to talk about decision making and how you can make the best decisions to go with your assumptions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by talking about my path and my journey and how I ended up wasting 2 years, or at least believing that I've wasted 2 years. And so what I did is, so I started out in, what year was it, like 2022 or something. I started out by dropping out of school, okay? Because I believed that school was a waste of time and I could make way more progress without school, and that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, okay? And so my assumption was that I can do something I want to do that's more fun and I make more money, okay? So this is kind of a fucked flowchart because we're going to get rid of these too. But that was my assumption, okay? That basically being an entrepreneur is the ultimate way to live. You experience more emotions, more highs, more lows, and that just leads to a better life overall, okay? And you can have more fun and make more money, right? And, I mean, this in itself, you know, I haven't really thought about this, but this also has assumptions in that money is better, in that highs and lows, having more highs and lows is better as opposed to staying steady. There's all sorts of assumptions that are baked into this, but that was the overall assumption that I made. And then my assumption from here was that I can, okay, so there's basically two schools of thought when it comes to business or life or success in general. And school of thought number one is passion is king. Passion is everything, okay? And the people who believe this, you know, you've heard Steve Jobs say it, or Jeff Bezos, or these types of people who are extremely successful, and they say that you have to be successful about what, or you have to be passionate about what you do because it's so hard that you won't be able to do it without being passionate about it, okay? So that's school of thought number one, and now we'll talk about that right now, but the other school of thought is fuck passion, grind and hustle is all that matters, okay? And so these people, I mean, everyone knows about these kind of opposing schools of thought, and these people believe that, you know, passion doesn't matter and it's all about actually, like, just whatever you do, just focus on making money and being successful, okay? And so my first assumption, this is actually a question, okay? If we look at it, hopefully I can draw an arrow somehow. Okay, so what we can do is I can put a sticky note here, and I can say this is a question, and that question is actually, how do I do this, okay? Because I have to know what my path is going to be, okay? So the answer to that question is either I follow one of these two paths, and I'm not sure at the time which path is actually correct, but in my opinion, from what I've been hearing, passion is everything, and as long as I do something I'm interested in, there's no way I can fail, okay? And so what I decided to do is I started a YouTube channel, and this was a YouTube channel about cars, okay? Because I was like, well, I like cars, and I like making videos, and so I'm going to love this business, and it's going to be the best business ever because YouTube is kind of overpowered, right? You get a lot of leverage. And so what I did is I thought about, can I make videos? And my assumption on that was yes. And then I also thought about, am I going to like doing it? Okay. And then, will I be able to get viewers? Okay. These are essentially the three assumptions that you make whenever you do something, whenever you do basically any sort of entrepreneurial endeavor, okay? And so one thing is this also applies like if you were going to go get a job as a software engineer, okay? Because let's see if there's a keyboard shortcut to do this. But we'll go getting software engineer job or any job, okay? Because what you have to assume in order to follow that path is that first of all, you can learn the skills, okay? You can enjoy it enough to, because anything that you do, you have to do it for a certain amount of time to actually start kind of reaping the benefits. Basically, every skill, everything that you do is kind of like a hockey stick where you start out kind of in the, like basically making no progress, and then eventually it becomes exponential as you get better to stick with it. So you have to enjoy it kind of to stick with it. Or actually, let's just say, can you stick with it? Okay. Because let's pretend enjoyment doesn't matter because I haven't talked about that yet. And then the last thing is, can you get a job? Where if this was like an entrepreneurial endeavor, it would be, can you get viewers? Can you get customers? Blah, 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 right? But essentially, these are the three kind of questions that I boiled it down to. And as we know, a question is kind of, or an assumption is based on a question, okay? So you have to make the assumption that you can learn the skills, that you can stick with it, and that you can get hired, okay? Because if you didn't believe in those assumptions, then it would be much harder to actually do it because you wouldn't believe in it, right? And you wouldn't actually be able to do it. If these assumptions are actually false, if you can't get a job, then there's really no point and you won't be successful with it, okay? And so what I did is I started doing these things, and what I found is that the answer to this was actually yes. Okay. Holy shit, dude. Alright, yes. You know what? There's an easier way to do this. So we'll just type yes. Am I going to like doing it? Will I be able to get viewers? That turned out to be a yes, okay? And these, I basically assumed at the beginning that, yes, I'll be able to make videos and I'll be able to get viewers because I like being on camera and I like, talking. But then, the question that I did not anticipate having to answer and consider was, am I going to like doing it? And the answer to this, after 3 months, right after I dropped out of school, I spent 12 hours a day working on this, and I realized after 3 months, I felt nothing and I wasn't enjoying it, okay? And I did not want to continue. I could not see a future where I just kept doing the same thing, making videos about this, and I realized that the answer to am I going to like doing it is no. And with YouTube, it's very much an exponential curve where like you start your channel and this is your viewers, and then at a certain point your videos start to get good or you start to get traction and it goes up like a hockey stick. And so it's extremely important, but this could be 2 years plus, okay? And so it's extremely important that you actually stick with it through this time period. And, in fact, through this time period as well, because you have to stick with it past that point to actually get the returns that you're in it for, okay? And so, yeah, that was kind of the problem, is that I realized that I did not like doing it, okay? And so then, what I assumed at this point, and I'm using the word assumed here so that you realize that all of these things are actually just assumptions and things I'm trying to kind of figure out, is that this is in fact false, okay? And this is kind of the assumption that I had at this point. At the point that we're at in the story, this is the assumption that I had, okay? And so what I realized is that potentially, what if Steve Jobs is wrong and Bill Gates is wrong because they're fucking outliers and they're super geniuses and they were miles ahead of me at my age, and what actually applies to me better is fuck passion, it's all about the grind and the hustle, okay? And so, at this point, I had I started a marketing agency, okay? And this marketing agency is what I spent the last 2 years on, and this is what was the giant waste of my time and my life, and I'm going to explain to you why. So, basically, we have a few assumptions that I made, okay? And this is like when I was starting this business. So the first assumption was that I will be able to do it, okay? And so, you know what? I will be able to, I will like it, okay? Because that's kind of the main assumption that I'm making when I'm starting a business, is that I want to actually enjoy it, okay? And then I can make money, all right? And I'm not going to go, because if we go into this one, we can actually ask different questions to kind of come up with a different series of assumptions. But under this I can make money branch, we would have, can I build a good product? And then, how do I, keyboard shortcut? Oh, shit. Can I build a good product? And then the other one is, can I get customers? Okay, this is most businesses. So you have this kind of, and then you have this one, which is essentially, if we go into it, I will like it boils down to, first of all, so in this case, it was, I will like it. Wait, hang on. Okay, so I sort of had to think about that, but I changed this to, will I be able to persist at this thing? Okay, because what I'm going to talk about later is that this is actually the riskiest question that you have to ask yourself, okay? Because the answer to this question will override this in a huge amount, okay? Because basically, if you can persist at anything in this modern economy where it's extremely efficient, because if someone has a certain skill, they can sell that skill to anyone in the world because of the internet. And so it really doesn't matter what you're skilled at. Even people who are skilled at literally playing video games, a product that was built for people to waste time, you can get good enough at that people will pay you, okay? And so I can make money is often true, but will I be able to persist enough to get to that point is the riskier question, okay? And so that boils down to, will I like doing it, okay? Because if you like doing something, obviously it's going to be easier, okay? People who love coding are the 10x engineers. And the other question you can ask is, even if I don't like doing something, can I persist despite that, okay? Do I have what it takes to persist despite not liking it, okay? And then you can even tack on another question, which is, will it get more fun the more I do it, the better I get. Okay. Because there's often this thing where you go, oh, I don't like doing XYZ, and they say, oh, of course you don't like doing XYZ because you're bad at it, right? You would like it if you were good. And so this is kind of another assumption that I made, that I would have to, because what happened in this business is, about 3 weeks in, I had made no progress, okay? I was selling websites initially, and I hated cold calling, I hated prospecting, and this answered this question, okay? Will I like doing it? Essentially, it boiled down to no, right? And at that point, I should have gone, okay, shit. Now my question is, can I persist regardless? And the answer to that question was also no, because I was spending 2 or 3 hours a day of unproductive time making cold calls when I had gone from working 12 hours a day every single day on this other project, where I was actually motivated to do it because I sort of enjoyed it, and this project I could not actually put in the work required to make it happen, okay? And so the answer to this question was already no. But I came up with this other question, which was, will it get more fun the more I do it and the better I get? And the point of this was the key question that I should have been focusing on, that I was not. Because this was an underlying assumption that I was not actively thinking about every single day, or at least every single week. I was not thinking about, will it get more fun, or, am I having more fun the better I get? No, I was just like, it'll eventually get more fun. And that never happened, okay? And that's why it's extremely important to think about what assumptions you're making. And so now this video kind of becomes, how do you actually start a business and how do you pick your opportunities, okay? So let's say we'll start with just a typical business, which I would not consider a startup. Let's say it's a plumbing company, okay? because in my mind, a a startup is a company where you're making assumptions about a market where you're trying to do something brand new, and you have to make the assumption that you can do it. We'll talk about that in a second. But for a plumbing company, you basically have to make three assumptions. Sorry. So the first assumption is, can I provide good service? Okay, and this applies to every company because the question you have to ask is, can I actually build a product to solve a problem that actually solves the problem? Okay, and so that's basically in the context of a plumber, you have to be able to do the work that's satisfactory, that doesn't leak or whatever, and it's actually good. Okay, and then the next question is, can I get customers? Okay, and then the last question is, can I persist? Okay, because basically any business is going to have the same kind of long tail distribution, I believe that's the right term, where it gets better over time, it kind of goes exponential, and you have to be able to stick with it to actually reap the rewards. And so this first question, you can almost assume that the answer is yes, because you can also look at other plumbing companies and see that there's, if you Google plumbing in your city name, you're going to see, 10 plumbers on there with 4.9 stars or whatever, and you go, okay, yeah, if other people can do it, I can probably do it, right? And then you also have to ask the question, can I get customers? And with this question, it might not be super clear because let's say you have like 18 other plumbing companies in your town, you have to ask the question, is there room for another company? Now, there almost always is because it's just, first of all, it's a trade, and trades are just like, it's easy mode, basically, because the demand is so high. So if there's like 18 other plumbers, you just have to assume that there's room in the market. But you could also make the assumption that no, there's no room for another competitor, or it wouldn't be worth it because you would have to like compete on price, right? So let's go competition here. That says competition. Okay, and then the last question, which I'm going to argue here, is the most risky question, is can you actually persist with this opportunity? Okay, and so then what you have to do is you have to think about these assumptions as your business plan, okay? Because what you're doing when you're starting a business is you're testing your assumptions to make sure that you can actually achieve what you want to do right here, okay? And so, undo. And so, the way to do that is, well, basically the only way to test out the question of can I persist is to start, okay? Now, the thing that's kind of risky about this assumption and testing this is that if we use the context of, like, let's say we switch this to a gym, a gym, and I should move this back. If we switch this to a gym, then getting started, knowing whether or not you can persist, might require, let's say it's $100,000 to start your gym, okay? If it means that testing this assumption costs $100,000 and you're not 100% sure that you can persist, then this might be too much risk, and it might be better to focus on other types of questions or come up with other questions to see if you can answer them. Like perhaps you could bring this over and you could say like personal training and just see if you like that and why or why not, okay? And then, also you can think about like what would it actually look like in the day-to-day of running a gym. You could go work for a gym. There's all sorts of things that you can do to test this assumption without actually spending this $100,000. You can go work for a gym, or you can work under someone, or turn your home into a gym and rent it out to your friends. It doesn't really matter. The actual problem is that you have to figure out the answer, and you have to do it in a way that's not going to waste your time or your life, okay? Now, if we apply this to the context of a startup, this is more risky, okay? Because let's say, and I'm going to have to, because I'm doing this all in one document, I'm going to have to shift everything over. So we'll go, let's say, social network for cats, okay? This is a cat-only sharing platform. It's like Instagram minus everything else. Obviously, it's a stupid idea. It's one of the jokes in the startup culture, especially with like software engineers, where it's like, here's my startup idea. It's just Instagram, but it's only cats, right? But here are the assumptions. So the first assumption is, can you build it? Okay, and then we also have the question of, can you get users? And then the question of, can you persist, right? And so what we see here is, this is actually the biggest assumption, right? Because we're trying something new, and yes, we have kind of the affirmation that cat videos work on Instagram. Of course, we already have Instagram, so we know it can be built. Which, by the way, if you're thinking about building something like a robot or a flying car, like a drone or company or whatever, like a drone you can ride on, this shit's so fucking sick. If you're asking a question where you're not actually sure if you can build it, this is, well, I want to say something. If you're thinking about an idea where you're not sure if it can actually be built, you are either a super genius, like Elon Musk, think about SpaceX or Starlink or Tesla or Figure, which is Brett Adcock, which is like a human robotics, but Tesla also does that. If you're asking the question, can you build it, you're either a super genius or you're an idiot because you believe that you might be able to do it, and you might be about to waste the next 10 years of your life trying to build it, okay? So, yeah, that question is almost always yes, because there's so many tools that help you build things, but if it's not yes, then I would be worried. Can you persist? I mean, this question you almost never know the answer for, and so you have to figure out, like, what it actually looks like. So this is sort of an advantage you have when you get more experience, is that you try more things and you can know which things you like and which things you didn't, because you compare to things in the past. But can you persist? You're kind of going to have to figure that out as you go. But in a startup, the main question is, can you actually get users? And to answer this question, you could do this plus, and then just working on it, right? And then you could come up with your answer of, can you get users? Now, the problem with doing that is, this is either, okay, let's maybe being a bit dramatic if we say 1,000 hours, but let's say 100 hours to build this, right? And then, or we'll say like $1,000 in developing cost. $1,000, damn, that would only be $10 an hour. But yeah, like, let's say like $1,000, right, to actually build it out. And so it's extremely expensive to test it this way, to actually combine these things and actually do it. The real best way to do it would be to go, okay, can I get users? Let's figure this out by doing, let's run ads. Let's build, I mean, you could do like some sort of MVP where you maybe make like a Facebook group of just cats and see if that like actually takes off, and if you can convert people to another platform, because platform is actually like your risk, right? Because you have to get people to use your platform. And at the end of the day, oftentimes the best way to test your assumptions, especially if it's a question like this, is not to start out by building the product. It's to start out in the most efficient way possible to actually test this assumption in the lowest cost way. Okay, because when it comes to deciding which way, like how you're going to test this, you have to decide which one is the most important. Okay, and to decide which one is the most important, there are two thought experiments that I like to do. So one is one-way versus two-way doors. And so this is Jeff Bezos. This is pretty famous. But if you have a door that you can go into, but you can also come out of, that means you can go into this thing, you can test it out, and then you can leave. So if we think about running ads, you can easily spin up ads. It might take you a couple of hours to put together some ads and then run them, and you can figure it out very quickly. You can go in that door for a few hours, and then you can come right back out with the added knowledge of what's behind that door. Okay. Now, the alternative is a one-way door where you can go in and you can only keep going. Okay. And so this is only a few decisions, but you have to be aware which decisions are going to take Like, if we think about it, long things that take a lot of time are one-way doors, because that time, you can never get that time back. You can't go back in time. And so, yeah, if it's something like running ads, it takes a few hours, then that's basically a two-way door, because it's an evening or, a few evenings, and you've got your answer. Whereas if it's something that takes a long time to figure out, or a lot of money, that's a one-way door. You're going to invest that money in that time, and you can't get it back. And so that's an extremely expensive decision to make. Now, the other way to think about it is, if all of your decisions are one-way doors, okay, then you have lots of opportunities, and they're all decent opportunities because you can try them, figure out what's on the other side, and then go back if they're not good. But then we come down to what is, I think, the worst case question. And I believe I drew this basically from Alex Hormozy. And you just have to think about, what is the worst case of what could happen, and am I okay with that? Okay, because if we take, for example, the question of, all right, let's say you're starting the gym, and it's either $100,000 to invest in getting it started, or it's 1,000 hours of labor. I don't know how you would interchange money for labor in this scenario for starting a gym, because you need equipment, but I don't know. Let's just pretend, right? So in one case, you're going to lose $100,000, and in one case, you're going to lose 1,000 hours. And so what you have to figure out is, am I willing to lose this $100,000, so say it's your life savings? If not, then am I willing to lose 1,000 hours? And if you say, yes, I believe that I'm extremely confident in these two things, in can I build it, and can I persist, then it makes sense to actually make the $1,000 hour investment, because you're okay with the downside, because you're okay with testing it out and finding out that you were wrong, and just kind of learning from that. Okay, it's a one-way door, but it's a door that you're okay with going through, and kind of, even if it's not the best case scenario, if it is the worst case scenario, you're okay with that. All right. And so, okay, there we go. And so this is basically the fundamental thing that you should be thinking about, because when I started my YouTube channel, I was conscious of this. I realized that my question was, is passion going to work for me? Is being passionate about this thing, and kind of, what is passion? Like, is this the right kind of passion? This was my question, and so I set out to answer that question. And after a few months, I decided, no, I'm glad I tried this out, but in fact, my assumption was wrong, and so I'm going to try something else. But what my decision was, or what my fuck up was that in this kind of path, I made the inadvertent decision of going through this one-way door and not realizing. Basically, I went through this one-way door, and I didn't realize that it was a one-way door, and that it would take 2 years to find the answer, and that it would essentially be the worst case scenario, that no, it will not get more fun, and no, I will not make as much money, because I can't actually put in the work, because I fucking hate the day-to-day. And so, yeah, this is kind of the entire point of the video that I want to make now, just to kind of summarize everything. Before you make any decision, what are my, holy shit, dude, this is taking way too long. All right, we'll just do text. What are my assumptions? Okay, this is the main question. This is the main, and maybe this should actually be questions. You should be thinking about, what are my main questions when it comes to doing this thing? So if you decide, if you're 18 watching this, and you have to decide on what you want to study in school because your parents won't let you out, and you still believe that college is a good idea, and let's say you choose like medical, you're basically asking yourself, you're assuming, without really asking, because we do this so often, you're assuming that you would like the day-to-day, and that you would be able to persist with it long enough to make money, right? To actually reap the rewards of what you want. And so you're assuming, you're asking the question, this might be getting confusing, but you're asking the question, am I actually capable of doing this, based on the questions, right? Based on the questions of, can I stick with it long enough? Am I going to like it? And so oftentimes what we're doing is we're just kind of blindly taking action and going through one-way doors, like starting school and going through all of school for one major without really thinking about the actual questions that we should be trying to answer. Because, like, most people, right, you just go through school and could be a waste of time, right, and money. With medical, some of that debt can be fairly burdening, and so most people just do this when in fact they could be doing. I don't fucking know, dude. Like, if you just went, I mean, I know it's hard, but it's probably easier than going through a bunch of debt. But if you cold call like the medical practices uh, around you and ask to shadow, I mean, dude, if you're young, you have such an advantage because if you actually cold call, or better yet, just show up and say, "Hey, I'm really," you can just lie. You can say, "Hey, I'm really passionate about this. I want to shadow you." You can answer this question so much more efficiently and save so much time by being smarter about how you make decisions and how you figure things out. So that is my call to action for this video. Be smart about how you answer questions, and think, go for walks and think about what questions am I trying to answer by doing what I'm doing right now, and is there a more efficient way to be doing this? Because after thinking about for just a little bit of time, especially, I recommend turn on your voice recorder and talk out loud because it refines your thinking so much more. But yeah, just think about what questions you could be asking and what your assumptions you're making without actually knowing it, and then you can solve them. So I hope this video was helpful.